Imagine this. You're sitting across from someone you care about, and suddenly, a single sentence shatters your confidence, like a mirror cracking under pressure. You have to accept me as I am. Sounds innocent. Right. But what if those words are a trap, pulling you into a relationship that steals your peace, your power, and your sense of self? Hi, I'm your guide at Jung Psyche Hub, and today, we're diving deep into a topic inspired by the legendary Carl Jung. We're uncovering the 5 dangerous things a man might say that scream walk away phrases tied to his shadow, the hidden part of his psyche that could destroy your emotional freedom. Stick with me to the end, because I'll not only reveal these red flags but also arm you with real-world tools to stand tall and reclaim your inner strength. Let's get started. Your journey to self-mastery begins right now. Let's start with a phrase that might sound like a badge of authenticity at first glance. You have to accept me as I am. It rolls off the tongue with a hint of vulnerability, doesn't it? But pause for a moment, because beneath that seemingly honest declaration lies a potential red flag that could unravel your emotional stability. Inspired by Carl Jung's profound insights into the human psyche, this phrase often signals a man clinging to his shadow, the unexamined, darker aspects of himself he refuses to confront. And if you let it slide, you might find yourself trapped in a cycle that drains your energy and dims your inner light. Take Sarah, for example, a woman I once spoke with who shared her story with raw honesty. She dated a man who leaned on this phrase like a shield. Early on, she noticed his short temper and tendency to dodge accountability, brushing it off with, "That's just how I am accepted." At first, she thought it was endearing, a quirky part of his personality. But as months passed, those quirks turned into emotional manipulation, snappy remarks, guilt trips when she raised concerns, and a victim act whenever she tried to address it. Sarah realized she was rowing a boat alone, pouring her effort into a relationship while he refused to even step aboard. Sound familiar? Have you ever felt stuck with someone who refuses to grow? Carl Jung taught us that self-knowledge is the cornerstone of wisdom. But true growth begins when we stop hiding behind excuses and start integrating our shadows, those parts of us we'd rather ignore. When a man uses, "You have to accept me as I am," to justify harmful behavior, he's not embracing authenticity, he's dodging evolution. This phrase often surfaces after you've spotted troubling patterns. Maybe he avoids responsibility, lashes out passively, or shifts blame onto you. And when you call it out, he might play the victim, turning the tables with, "You're trying to change me." But here's the truth. Accepting someone doesn't mean tolerating the intolerable. Real authenticity takes courage to evolve, not stubbornness to stagnate. The Stoics echo this wisdom. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The perfection of character is to live each day as if it were your last, without laziness, without pretense." A man who clings to this excuse isn't living with integrity. He's leaning on a crutch. Picture this. You're in a partnership where you're the only one stretching, adapting, and growing, while he remains static. It's like watering a plant that refuses to bloom. Over time, you'll find yourself carrying the emotional load, making excuses for broken promises, and losing sight of your own worth. So, what do you do? The next time you hear this phrase, don't be swayed by its surface depth. Ask yourself, is he willing to look inward and grow? Or is this a polished excuse to avoid change? A conscious woman who's fought for her peace and discipline deserves a partner who meets her halfway, not one who holds her back. Carl Jung believed that relationships thrive when both parties face their shadows together. If he resists that journey, you're not just saving yourself by walking away, you're honoring your own growth. Have you ever had to set that boundary? Share your experience in the comments. I'd love to hear how you reclaimed your power now. Let's shift gears to a phrase that might sound like harmless venting at first. All my exes were crazy. Toxic. It rolls out with a dramatic flair. Maybe even a chuckle. As if he's just unloading past baggage. But don't let that casual tone fool you. Behind those words lies a psychological pattern that could pull you into a web of emotional immaturity and blame shifting. Drawing from Carl Jung's wisdom and Stoic philosophy, this phrase is a neon sign of someone projecting their own unresolved flaws onto others. And if you ignore it, you might become the next target in his endless blame game. Consider my friend Jenna's story, a wake-up call that hit hard. She met a guy who couldn't stop ranting about his exes, painting them as irrational villains while casting himself as the innocent victim. They were all toxic, he'd say with a shrug, as if it were a badge of honor. At first, Jenna felt sympathy, thinking she could be the one to break his cycle. But soon, she noticed the pattern. Every disagreement turned into her being labeled too sensitive or overreacting, echoes of the same script he'd used before. It dawned on her that his exes weren't the problem. His refusal to self-reflect was. Have you ever seen this pattern in someone you know? It's a red flag worth watching. Carl Jung's concept of the shadow comes into play here. He believed that what we don't make conscious ends up controlling us from the depths of our psyche. When a man constantly trashes his exes, he's likely projecting his own unacknowledged shortcomings, anger, insecurity, or manipulation onto them. Stoic philosophy reinforces this with Epictetus's insight. It's not events that disturb us, but our interpretation of them. If he never pauses to consider his role in past conflicts, he's avoiding the mirror of self-examination. This isn't just venting. It's a chronic victim mindset, where blame becomes a shield against growth. The danger this narrative sets you up as the sole savior in his story. He might unconsciously expect you to be the one who finally gets him, only to turn on you when you don't fit the role. Jenna learned this the hard way. After months of trying to prove she was different, she found herself on the receiving end of his criticisms, mirroring the crazy label he'd slapped on others. A conscious woman knows her worth isn't defined by fixing someone else's broken narrative. As Carl Jung warned, what we deny submits us, and staying with someone who dodges responsibility is like building a relationship on quicksand. So, how do you spot this trap? Listen closely. Has he ever owned up to his part in past relationships? Or is it always a one-sided sob story? If it's the latter, you're not dealing with a partner. You're facing a projection machine. The Stoics would urge you to protect your peace, reminding you that your worth isn't tied to his judgments. Walk away with dignity, not out of spite, but because you deserve someone who grows alongside you, not someone who drags you into their unresolved past. Have you ever had to break free from a blame-shifting dynamic? Share your story below. I'm here to listen and support your journey. Now, let's dive into a phrase that masquerades as love, but hides a sinister twist. If you really loved me, you'd do what I ask. At first, it might tug at your heartstrings, sounding like a vulnerable plea from someone who needs you. But peel back the layers, and you'll uncover a manipulative trap designed to erode your boundaries and hand over your power. Inspired by Carl Jung's exploration of the shadow and Stoic principles of freedom, this phrase is a red flag, waving boldly in the wind, warning you of a relationship where love is weaponized into control. Let me introduce you to Lisa's story, a cautionary tale that hits close to home. Lisa was head over heels for a man who used this line like a master key. Early on, he'd say things like, "If you really loved me, you'd skip that night out with friends to stay with me." It started small, sacrificing a social event here and there, but soon it snowballed. He asked her to change her hobbies, dress differently, even mute her opinions to keep the peace. Lisa thought she was proving her love. But over time, she lost herself, feeling like a puppet dancing to his tune. Have you ever felt guilty for setting boundaries with someone you care about? You're not alone. And this is where the danger lies. Carl Jung's teachings on the shadow reveal why this phrase is so insidious. He argued that unbalanced relationships often stem from one partner projecting their insecurities and need for dominance. Masking it as affection, when a man says this, he's not seeking love, he's testing your willingness to surrender your autonomy. The Stoics align with this, with Epictetus declaring, "No one can enslave you emotionally unless you allow it." True love, they insist, is built on mutual respect and freedom, not guilt or coercion. Yet, this phrase flips that script, turning your affection into a tool for his control. It's a subtle demand, disguised as devotion, and the more you give in, the more you lose. The progression is chilling. What begins as a test of love morphs into a routine of emotional submission. Lisa found herself second-guessing her choices, afraid to say no, until she barely recognized the woman in the mirror. This isn't love, it's a slow theft of your identity. The danger escalates as the demands grow first. It's a small favor, then a major life decision, until you're living for his approval instead of your own truth. Carl Jung warned that real love is a conscious act of shared freedom, not a possessive grip. If you let this phrase take root, you risk drifting further from who you are, trapped in a dynamic where your voice is silenced. So, how do you break free? The answer lies in standing firm. When you hear this, pause and reflect. Is this a request born of love, or a demand cloaked in guilt? Respond with clarity. Set your boundaries without apology. Tell him, "I love you, but I won't compromise my values." A man who truly cares will respect that. One who doesn't will reveal his true colors. The Stoics would urge you to act with integrity, not fear of losing him. Walking away from this manipulation isn't cold, it's an act of self-respect. Have you ever had to reclaim your voice from a similar situation? Drop your story in the comments. I'm here to cheer you on as you embrace your power. Let's turn our attention to a phrase that cuts deeper than a knife. "You're not enough for me." These words can land like a punch to the gut, leaving you questioning your worth and scrambling to prove yourself. On the surface, it might seem like honest feedback, but dig into Carl Jung's psychology and Stoic wisdom, and you'll see it's a projection of someone else's inner void, a deliberate attempt to shrink you down so they can feel bigger. This is a red flag that threatens to dismantle your self-esteem, and recognizing it could be the key to reclaiming your power. Meet Emily, a woman whose story mirrors a struggle many face. She was in a relationship with a man who constantly compared her to others, dropping lines like, "You're not enough for me," when she didn't meet his shifting expectations. At first, she tried harder, working late to impress him, changing her style, even silencing her own dreams to fit his vision. But the goalposts kept moving. One day, it was her career. The next, her personality. Exhausted and doubting herself, Emily realized this wasn't about her shortcomings. It was about his need to control through insecurity. Have you ever rebuilt your worth after hearing something like this? You're not alone, and your journey matters. Carl Jung's insight into the shadow illuminates this dynamic. He taught that what we don't confront within ourselves, we project onto others. When a man says, "You're not enough," he's likely reflecting his own emptiness. Unmet expectations. A fragile ego. He's not critiquing you. He's unloading his dissatisfaction, hoping to make you dependent on his validation. Stoic philosophy backs this up with Marcus Aurelius's words, Do not let another man's soul rule over yours. Your worth isn't tied to his judgments. It's rooted in your actions, your virtues, and your inner strength. Yet, this phrase tries to hijack that truth, turning you into a project to be perfected rather than a partner to be cherished. The toll is devastating. Emily found herself trapped in a cycle where she was always chasing his approval, losing sight of her own light. This isn't love. It's a game where the rules change to keep you off balance. The more you strive to be enough, the more he'll find new flaws, leaving you drained and disconnected from your authentic self. Carl Jung warned that what remains unconscious becomes our fate. And if you don't catch this early, you might spend years proving a worth that was never in question. The Stoics add that external validation is a shaky foundation. True confidence comes from within, not from someone else's whims. So, how do you rise above when you hear you're not enough? Pause and breathe. Remind yourself, this insecurity isn't yours to carry, it's his. You don't need to beg for affection or twist yourself into someone else's mold. Instead, stand tall in your value, knowing you're here to share your life with someone who lifts you up, not tears you down. If he can't see your greatness, that's his loss, not your failure. Walk away with dignity, not to prove a point, but to honor the person you've become. As Carl Jung said, you cannot make someone see your light if they are only searching for their shadows. Have you ever had to let go of someone who dimmed your shine? Share your breakthrough in the comments. I'm rooting for you to shine even brighter. We've reached the final phrase, and it's a stealthy one that might slip under your radar. Do whatever you want. Delivered with a passive-aggressive edge, cold, ironic, or laced with resentment. On the surface, it sounds like he's granting you freedom. But don't be deceived. This is an emotional trap, a manipulative tactic rooted in the shadows of the psyche, as Carl Jung would describe it. Paired with Stoic wisdom, this phrase reveals a man unwilling to communicate directly, instead pulling you into a game of guilt and uncertainty, recognizing it could be your ticket to breaking free and reclaiming your peace. Let's look at Mia's experience, a story that hits home for anyone who's felt this sting. Mia was planning a weekend getaway with friends when her partner shrugged and said, "Do whatever you want." His tone dripping with sarcasm. She went ahead, but the aftermath was a storm of silent treatment and snide remarks, leaving her second-guessing her choice. It wasn't freedom he offered, it was a test, daring her to step out of line so he could punish her emotionally. Over time, Mia realized this wasn't about her decisions, it was his way of controlling her without saying it outright. Have you ever handled passive-aggressive comments that left you confused? You're not alone. And there's strength in seeing through the facade. Carl Jung's concept of the shadow shines here. He noted how people manipulate from hidden parts of their psyche. And this phrase is a prime example. When a man says, "Do whatever you want," with that biting undertone, he's not expressing his true feelings. He's expecting you to read his mind and comply. If you don't, the guilt trips, drama, or reproaches follow. Stoic philosophy counters this with Seneca's advice: speak in a way that your words don't require interpretation. Healthy relationships thrive on clear communication, not riddles, designed to keep you off balance. This phrase places you in a constant state of doubt, forcing you to tiptoe around his emotions instead of living your truth. The impact is insidious. Mia found her peace eroding as she tried to decode his moods, sacrificing her own needs to avoid his backlash. This isn't love, it's a power play where ambiguity is the weapon. The more you try to please, the more you lose yourself, trapped in a cycle where his silence speaks louder than words. Carl Jung and the Stoics agree that true freedom comes from clarity and authenticity. If you let this manipulation persist, You'll wake up one day wondering why your voice feels muted. The Stoics would urge you to draw a line, refusing to play this game. So, how do you respond? Take it literally and act without fear. When he says, do whatever you want with that passive-aggressive twist, do it. Go about your day. Set your boundaries. And don't waste energy explaining. This breaks the cycle, forcing him to either grow up and communicate directly or retreat into his silence alone. It's not cold. It's emotional intelligence. Stand firm. Choose your path. And let go of anyone who thrives on confusion. A man who truly values you won't manipulate with riddles. He'll show up with transparency. Have you ever walked away from a passive-aggressive dynamic? Share your victory in the comments. I'm here to celebrate your courage. We've journeyed together through the shadows, unmasking the 5 phrases that can derail your peace and power. You have to accept me as I am. All my exes were crazy, toxic. If you really loved me, you'd do what I ask. You're not enough for me. And do whatever you want with that passive-aggressive sting. These aren't just words, they're warning signs. Rooted in Carl Jung's shadow and countered by Stoic wisdom, signaling relationships that could steal your essence. But here's the explosive truth: you are the author of your story, and no one has the right to rewrite it. This journey isn't just about walking away, it's about stepping into your strength, reclaiming your voice, and building a life where your worth shines unshakable. You've got the tools now. Recognize the red flags, set your boundaries, and choose partners who grow with you, not against you. Let that fire ignite within you, because you deserve love that lifts, not love that binds. So, take a deep breath, stand tall, and own your power like never before now. Let's keep this momentum going. Subscribe to Young Psyche Hub and hit that bell so you never miss a deep dive into self-discovery and psychology. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Let's empower each other. Drop your thoughts, your victories, or even your struggles in the comments below. I'm here to connect and celebrate with you. Together, we're not just surviving, we're thriving. Let's make it happen.